While I expect LeBron to be a member of the Los Angeles Lakers next season, it is certainly possible that the following season he's not. I mean, he could resign, of course. He could opt to retire, but he could also opt to sign elsewhere. There are multiple things that can happen in next offseason. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think is the most likely scenario for LeBron following this upcoming season. So again, we are projecting not the one that's going to start in a few months, right? The one after that, like the following season, a year from now, etc. So we have this report, and this is why we're talking about this. I promise. We have this report here on Legion Hoops from Dallas Hoops Journal that the Warriors, Cavs, and Mavericks are expected to pursue LeBron if he hits free agency next summer. And my first thought on this was, well, no duh. Like that's a no-brainer. That's an obvious thing, right? In fact, I'll go a step further and say I'm pretty sure there's a number of other teams that would pursue LeBron if he's a free agent, right? There's going to be a number of teams in the mix. Now that there's some caveats to that I'll explain, but a team that's a piece away, sure. Like, why not try to pursue LeBron? Especially because I expect for the following season, if he does play another one, doesn't wind up retiring this offseason or next offseason, so confusing. I expect that one to probably be his last season. So anyway, why not, right? Especially if the team that, like, let's say, for example, the team that comes in second, finishes second after the finals finish. Yeah, they probably should try to pursue LeBron. Like why not? And so with that being the case, I do think there's probably going to be a number of teams. But like I mentioned, that caveat, let's talk about these teams and the Lakers. I'll start with the Lakers. Firstly, the Lakers, unless they win a championship this offseason, or this season, I guess, I don't expect next offseason for them to offer him a max contract. Now, you can argue whether or not he's worth it, blah, blah, blah. You're going to expect some projected statistical fall off, just not a lot. Like, he's not going to magically become a 17-point per game scorer, but just a little bit, like a haircut off of what he's doing already. And you would probably expect him to play a few minutes less. And he'd also be going into his year 42 season. The reason I don't expect that is because I expect for the Lakers to take that max cap space and try to shop around with it. Now, I don't think they're going to get somebody on the free agent market, but they can use that cap space to take in a big salary too. And so I think it's much more likely, unless, again, they win a championship, that's entirely different by chance, right? I think it's much more likely they shop around with that. And then if they get somebody, they could come back to LeBron and say, hey, we have $20 million. So this is what we have. You could take a $20 million deal if you want to take that. That's your option if you want to take it. And you could be a part of what we have. We should be better. We got so-and-so. Maybe that's a decent name player. Maybe that's a couple other guys that fit better on the Luka. Who knows, right? So they could wind up in that scenario. In terms of Cleveland can sell LeBron on a couple of things, right? The history with Cleveland, obviously, that's a no-brainer. He could go back there. He could actually get a nice, like, farewell tour if he wanted to there. And so that's a thing, too. And the Warriors, like, consequently, with LeBron, I think LeBron would get a nice send-off anywhere because he's LeBron, right? But I do wonder about that. Like, would LeBron, if he played another season, would he and Steph be retiring at the same time? Like, seriously, because there's a world where that's a thing. Steph may play like a couple seasons. He may play 3 or 4. He could play another 5 if he wanted to. But Steph's getting up there in age too. Would he want to share that? I do wonder about that. That's just food for thought, right? But let's talk about Cleveland here. So Cleveland is in a situation where they're already over the second apron for next season. The following season. So the season after this, right? So they're already over the second apron. So if LeBron is a free agent, he's basically, unless they decide to flip some guys and create some space, which I probably am not doing unless you really, really want LeBron back, which I don't really have a problem with that. It's just, do you want to give up assets, move maybe a rotation piece or two to try to get 1 year of LeBron? I guess it depends on how they finish next season. If they win a championship, for example, I don't know that they do that because you wouldn't want to shake things up too much, I'd imagine. But if they finish second and they're in the finals and they lose to a Western team, maybe they decide to do that. Like, I think that matters. Anyway, the Cavs are in a situation where he would have to take, at this point, as currently projected, a minimum deal or maybe like the taxpayer MLE. I'm not a cap expert, but that's what it looks like to me. They're already over the second apron, so they don't have a lot of possibilities in terms of literally offering him a ton of money. If we look at Golden State's funny because, like I said, there's a possibility where not just him and Steph, but what about Dre and Jimmy? Like, Golden State, who knows what's going to be Golden State's roster in a couple of seasons, right? well, I guess 3 seasons technically from now, the 27-28 season. Because for 25-26, that's the one that they're waiting on Kuminga for, all that stuff. But 26-27 will be the season that LeBron could potentially go there. And in this situation, they actually do have space. However, the caveat to this is that who knows what this looks like when they're said and done with this offseason. There's probably a handful of guys that are waiting for contracts, at least 3 or 4, I think, that are waiting for contracts from them. And Jonathan Kuminga wasn't one of those guys. So they're going to fill out this roster. They're definitely not done. They're currently already have a ton of space under the aprons and all that stuff. But I think that whatever they wind up doing with Jonathan is going to impact this. And also, speaking of Jonathan, if they're somehow able to turn him into a star and a sign and trade like they would like to do, that may also impact this as well. Maybe it impacts how long Steph plays and all that stuff. Like there's so many different variables. But as currently projected with Golden State, he could technically go here, and it's not that far from LA. And he could, I think, get a really good reception there and all that stuff. I think that'd be interesting, of course, as well. I think fans would love to see him play with Steph for the final season, because it's always fun when those guys play against each other. And it was really, really cool seeing them play in the Olympics a year ago, all that stuff. And maybe fans would love to see that. So I think you could sell LeBron maybe on that. Dallas has a couple of his best friends in the league, and Kyrie and AD. They're in an interesting spot, though, because they do have some nice pieces on this team, whether they're younger or like prime aged guys. And they've got other pieces on this roster that you could put around side LeBron and all that stuff. And they could be really good. But I think with Cleveland, the most important thing about them is that they're also in the Eastern Conference. And now projecting a year out, you would expect for the Indianas of the world, the Bostons, to be back in the mix. But maybe another team drops out of the mix, right? Like who knows how things look a year from now, right? How open is the East? But regardless, the West will still be the same gauntlet. So if you're LeBron, if you want one last shot to win a championship, I think that you probably go to Cleveland. That makes the most sense. But it doesn't make sense financially, right? That's kind of the weird thing about it, because I know that he's a billionaire, but he's trying to buy a team. I'm sure he's still trying to stack up as much money as possible. And yeah, that would be a team investment. It wouldn't be like only him putting his money in, but he's just never taken a deal that insignificant. Like a minimum, that'd be a shock. That'd be a real shock. And if I'm LeBron, to be honest, if it's my last season, I don't care so much about the thing he said once upon a time, or like if he takes that, then, other guys maybe put in that position. I mean, integrity wise, I would care, but like, it's my last year, dude. Like if agents want to try to, or if teams want to try to use that against players and their agents, that LeBron took a MLE, like, so take a cut. It is what it is. That's the way I feel about it personally, but I'm not LeBron. I'm not going to count his pockets, but ultimately, though, there's a few teams, like I said, that are listed here, and I think there will be more in the mix depending on how things end. Now, projecting out LeBron is tricky, right? Because if you look at his year over year, his career here, we got over 20 years of history here, and last year was weird. We're going to find out pretty early on if last year was just an anomaly, or in terms of statistical, or if it's a sign. Now, I think I'm kind of in the middle. Like I said, I do think it's fair, even for the staunchest LeBron defenders, to expect a little bit of a fall off. Not like he's going to, again, turn into like a 16, 17, 18. He's still going to be a 24 or so point per game scorer. I'm cool with that. But I think he'll probably shave a few minutes off. If you didn't watch LeBron last year, I can give you some context to this, because my favorite thing is when people talk about LeBron, they say, oh, he was a negative on the plus minus. And by the way, it's the first time in his career. But he's a negative in the plus minus. Okay, well, LeBron played well for the team in general, just in general. Next, they put LeBron in a lot of lineups that he was expected to carry. And the thing about LeBron is you have historically been able to put him in lineups that you put him out there, and he's the fulcrum of everything. He is expected to hard carry those lineups. Spoiler, last year it looked like he couldn't do that anymore. And so if you were going to put LeBron in those lineups, you were going to lose those minutes. So if you put LeBron in more meaningful lineups, it would look better, right? And they had some really good spurts with LeBron, especially around that February area where he was a player of the month and all that stuff. Right before the Luka game, that New York Knicks game, or the Luka trade, the Knicks game, all that stuff looked really, really good out there. And I believe AD wasn't even playing that game. That was a pretty marquee win, especially against a marquee team. Did he fizzle out a little bit later on in the season? Probably, right? Especially, I believe he got hurt late in the season. But yeah, he did fizzle out a bit towards the end of the season. But I think that, again, it's reasonable to expect a bit of fall off, but I do. The beauty of it is that, and he showed this after the Luka trade, there were a lot, again, I'm sure a lot of people didn't watch every minute of it, but there were a lot of games where LeBron was quite literally in the corner, right? People still view LeBron, because he played this way for 20 years, as this heavy ball dominant, heavy usage guy. And he still is that. I mean, he's still going to have the ball a lot, but I mean, Luka's going to be number one by a long shot. And LeBron also has always given Austin the rock. And so there were a lot of times where these guys were out there and he's basically a role player out there. He's just slashing, catching and shooting, playing defense. That's what he was out there doing, like especially later in the season post Luka trade into the playoffs. And he could give you the offense, of course, in spurts. He could handle it if you wanted to, but he really just was off the ball. And that's what he said he wanted to do for a while. He wanted to be the second guy out there, hand the keys over. AD, it didn't really work so great with AD. I think probably because AD isn't a ball handler. I think that's the main reason why. But with Luka, it's forcefully going to happen. It did already happen, right? And so I think LeBron fit in really well. I think that's the main thing about it. And that's why I said I think if you could put him on a team where he has a decreased workload, I think he could fit in pretty well. He's always been an elite slasher, finisher, all that stuff, but he's really rounded out his shooting ability. And I think that's huge, right? So overall, I think within reason, though, especially during the long regular season, the grind of the regular season, would you still expect for him to take plays off? Absolutely. Like that's something that's baked into what he's going to be doing. He's been doing it for the better part of like 7 years or so. Like it's just going to happen. He's going to take some plays off, but I think it's somewhere in the middle. Like I said, whether or not like last season was just a true indicator of what he is now. And I think some realism is expected as well. He's literally going to be 41 in a few months here. Like I think that's realistic, right? But again, I'm still expecting heavy production from him. And I think if the Lakers are able to pace him well, right, that's going to be the big thing. And some of that's going to fall on him too. Is he okay with playing 30 minutes? I remember when Darvin Ham tried to do that a couple years ago, and LeBron was really pissed off. Maybe if he had managed it better, because that was like the opening game of the season against the Nuggets, he was pissed off, man, and they wound up losing that game, if I remember correctly. Maybe if you manage it better, right? You cut more of his minutes early in the game and then give him like the full fourth or like 3/4 of the fourth quarter, something like that. But I remember that he didn't really want to do that, and he always said that he felt better when he played more, things like that. And so I think that you may have to do that regardless of what he wants. You may have to pace him better just to get him through the season. And it's not just a him thing. I've said this before in videos that we've done, like on Kevin Durant. I think the Rockets have to really pace Kevin Durant to get him through this season healthy. I think that they need to really manage his workload, especially on the offensive end. Like it's not as crazy. It doesn't sound as crazy, but the season is long. Season's really long. And I do think that the Rockets are in a situation where they don't have as much playmaking. So there may be times where the offensive burden is like solely on KD. And maybe they have a step forward for some of the other guys and stuff like that. It remains to be seen, of course, but at least based on what I've seen so far. So I don't think that's anything crazy with LeBron. But ultimately, though, I know doing this video, it's been met with a lot of mixed response, as always is the case with LeBron videos. So I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't really like doing videos on LeBron, just because of how polarizing it is, dude. I'm going to be honest. I don't. Some people think that we're, which by the way, I'm just going to say this too before we wrap. We don't really make a lot of Laker videos on this channel. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's not, right? But some people think this whole like LeBron views thing. I mean, yeah, I did it today because we didn't have anything to talk about, but I don't like making videos. So anyway, yeah, I feel like I did a pretty good job of being objective about it. He is my favorite player, so there's that. Anyway, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think is going to wind up happening with LeBron in the next season. How much would you expect statistical production to fall off? Will he be on the court worth the max? I mean, he's obviously worth it away from the court in terms of the money he generates for the team. Any owner would tell you that if they had him on a max deal, he would bring in more than he's costing you to have on the team. That's just normal economics there. But what do you think will wind up happening? Which of these teams would he wind up going to? Does he stay on the Lakers? Does he go elsewhere? Does he retire? Right? Like we talked about. That is something I didn't talk a lot about in this video, but it's certainly a possibility. I'll see you all later.